Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Widia Ningsih, and here I will explain cultural dimensions and why they emerge. Culture has been defined in many ways. According to Great Hofstede, culture is the collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from others. Most commonly, the term culture is used for tribes or ethnic groups, nations, and organizations. The term can also be applied to the genders, to the generation, or to social classes. In an article first published in 1952 by anthropologists in U.S. Slide Kuhn, he has argued that there should be universal categories of cultures, and many authors in the second half of the 20th century have speculated about the nature of the basic problems of societies that would present distinct dimensions of cultures. As an essential, there is a general framework that underlies the real things and striking facts about cultural relativity. All cultures consist of so many different answers to the same question by humans. The pattern of life for every society must provide a proof and means of dealing with universal. For example, there are two genders, baby helplessness, the need for the fulfillment of basic biological needs of humans such as food, the place of living, and the presence of sex of individuals, and differences physical capacity, and so on. And in the 1970s, Hofstede had access to a large survey database of values and sentiments regarding people in more than 50 countries around the world. These people worked for the local subsidiary for one large multinational company, IBM, or stand for International Business Machines. Most organizations were surveyed twice over a 4-year interval, and the database contained more than 100 questionnaires. From this research, which was also assisted by many previous studies, and there were several editions from various studies and surveys conducted, and the outcome of it is the Hofstede model of 6 dimensions of national cultures. The first one is power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism and collectivism, masculinity versus femininity, long or short-term orientation, and indulgence and restraint. Indulgence versus restraint. The first one is power distance. The definition of all of the dimensions are: the first one is power distance. Power distance stands for inequality that is defined not from above but from below. The extent to which the less powerful members of organizations and institutions like family accept and expect that power is distributed unequally. A lower degree of the index signifies that people question an authority and attempt to distribute power. The second one is uncertainty avoidance. It is the extent to which the members belonging to a society are capable of coping with future uncertainty without going through stress, and also could define as a society's tolerance for ambiguity, in which people embrace or avert an event of something unexpected. The third one is individualism versus collectivism. Individualism set against its opposite, collectivism, defines the extent to which individuals are inclined toward remaining in groups. This index explores the degree to which people in a society are integrated into groups. Individualistic society have loose ties that often only related an individual to their family. And collectivism describes a society in which tightly integrated relationship, extended family, and others into groups. The fourth one is masculinity versus femininity. In this dimension, masculinity is defined as a preference in a society for achievement, heroism, assertiveness, and material rewards for success. These dimensions related to the divisions of emotional roles between women and men. And the fifth is long-term orientations versus short-term orientations. This dimension associates the connections of the past with the current and future action challenges. It is related to the choice of focus for people's effort in the future, present, and past. A lower degree of this index, which is short-term, indicates that traditions are honored and kept, while steadfastness is valued. The last one is indulgence versus restraint. This dimension refers to the degree of freedom that societal norms give to citizens in fulfilling their human desires. It is related to gratification versus control of basic human desire related to enjoying life. And it means of strict social norms. That's all the explanation from me about culture dimensions and why they emerge, and also the definitions of each dimensions. The next material will be explaining by Fius, which are the characteristics of each dimensions. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Fius. My student number is 52. I want to explain about characteristics of 6 half-state dimensions. The first is power distance. Characteristic of high power distance. Number 1, society is differentiated into classes. Number 2, power seen as providing social order. Number 3, upward social mobility is limited. Number 4, information is localized and hoarded. And then characteristics of lower power distance. Number 1 is society is large. Number 2, power linked to corruption and coercion. Number 3, upward social mobility is common. Number 4, resources are available to almost all. Number 5, information is widely shared. The second is uncertainty avoidance. Characteristic of low uncertainty avoidance. Number 1, view rules. Number 2, leader is facilitator. Number 3, open-ended learning. Number 4, innovation and achievement are important. Number 5, high labor turnover. Number 6, less resistance to change. And then characteristics of high uncertainty avoidance. Number 1, more formal rules. Number 2, leaders is the expert. Number 3, structured learning. Number 4, precision and society are important. Number 5, low labor turnover. Number 6, more resistance to change. The third is individualism and collectivism. Characteristic of individualism. Number 1, focus on individual. Number 2, responsibility to themselves and immediate family. Number 3, management mobility. Number 4, private and work life separate. Number 5, pleasure from individual achievement. And then characteristics of collectivism. Number 1, focus on the group. Number 2, responsibility for family and extended family. Number 3, employee commitment. Number 4, work and private life lives intermixed. Number 5, pleasure from group achievement. Number 4, masculine and feminine societies. Characteristic of masculinity societies. Number 1, gender-based occupational segregation. Number 3, belief in individual decision, equality, and competition. Number 4, admire achievement. Number 5, woman nature. Number 6 is live to work. And then characteristics of femininity societies. Number 1, less gender-based occupational segregation. Number 2, relationship among people concerned for other quality of life. Number 3, belief in group decision, equality, and solidarity. Number 4, sympathy for the unfortunate. Number 5, work to life. The fifth is long-term versus short orientation. Characteristics of long-term. Number 1 is persistence and perseverance. Number 2, relationship ordered and observed by status. Number 3, personal adaptability. Number 4, structured problem solving. Number 5, talent for applied and construct science. Number 6, trip value. Number 7, synthetic thinking. Number 8, student success attribute to effort. Number 9, collectivist and roughly equal social conditions. And then characteristics of short-term orientation. Number 1, expectation of quick result. Number 2, relationship not ordered by status. Number 3, personal stability. Number 4, talent for theoretical and abstract sciences. Number 5, tolerance and respect value. Number 6, analytic thinking. Number 7, differentiation according to abilities. And the last dimension is indulgence versus restraint. Characteristic of indulgence. Number 1, freely satisfy basic needs and behavior. Number 2, cannot easily be motivated with material reward. Number 3, enjoy moment rather than use time to compare with others. Number 4, objects need to fulfill purpose, not status. And then characteristics of restraint. Number 1, gratification is suppressed and restrained. Number 2, expect material reward for a job done well. Number 3, easily feels treated unfair. And number 4, status object important, for example, phone, laptop, watch, and car. And then examples of application of each dimension. Saudi Arabia is example of high power distance cultures. If you are not Muslim, you are not allowed to enter Saudi Arabia without an invitation. You also may not leave Saudi without an exit permit. Those who visit Saudi Arabia are expected to follow the same true Islamic laws as Saudis. The Islamic faith always this power distance, and it could be said that it even promotes that people be in superior position without question. Many Muslims believes in this idea of power and unquestioned superiority based off of verses in the Quran. And then low power distance. United States is example of low power distance cultures. In American, liberty and justice for all. This is also shown through the importance of equal rights in every aspect of the United States government and society. Within American organization, hierarchy is established for convenience. Superiors are always accessible and managers rely on individual employees in turn for their expertise. Managers and employees expect to be discussed with during decision making, and information is shared between the different levels of leadership and power. Along with this, communication is informal, direct, and participative. And then, example of uncertainty avoidance. High uncertainty avoidance. Latin Europe is example of high uncertainty avoidance. High uncertainty avoidance often requires rigid codes of behavior and beliefs. There may easily be intolerance of unorthodox behaviors, avoidance, and ideas. Persons with high uncertainty avoidance appreciate explicit interactions. They often rely on procedures and policies to reduce the chance of things getting out of control. And then example of low uncertainty avoidance. Unlocked countries and Eastern Europe is example of lower uncertainty avoidance. Low uncertainty avoidance persons act first and then get information. They are very comfortable with ambiguity and certainty. Cultural value clusters of low uncertainty avoidance work hard to minimize rules and laws that infringe of people's diverse perceptions. And then example of individualism and collectivism. Individualism. American is example of individualist people. It is because American people are more likely to be value their own well, bring over good of the group. American people have self-concepts that are more focused on independence rather than interdependence. As a result, they tend to describe themselves in terms of their unique personal characteristics and traits. A person from individualistic cultures might say, I am analytical, sarcastic, and athletic. And then collectivism. Kenyans is example of collectivist cultures. It is because Kenyans people might sacrifice their own comfort for the greater good of everyone else. Contrast with people living in individualistic cultures, collectivist culture societies, who will be more likely to say something like, I am good husband and loyal friend. And then feminine societies. Sweden is example of feminine societies cultures. Feminine cultures value quality of life, relationship, negotiating, and tend to be empathic and tolerant. Gender roles in such cultures tend not to be separately or rightly defined so that both men and women can exhibit a flexible range of behaviors. And then example of long-term versus short orientation. Example of long-term orientation. Japan scores as one of the most long-term oriented societies. Japanese see their life as a very short moment in a long history of mankind. From this perspective, some kind of fatalism is not strange to the Japanese. You do your best in your lifetime and that is all you can do. Example of short-term orientation. Canada is example of country that applies short-term orientation. Short-term oriented countries prefer to follow along with tradition rather than take a route of saving their money. For example, a member of the long-term oriented country might go to grocery for fruit hopping to buy strawberries, but when he or she see the blueberries are on sale, she is likely to buy them instead. In contrast, a short-term oriented woman may travel to the produce section hoping to buy strawberries and be content with this because she planned to make her shortcake for her weekend guest. And the last is example of indulgence versus restraint. Indulgence. Dimension to the international workplace. For example, indulgence cultures place far more importance on freedom of speech and personal control, while in restrained cultures, there is a greater sense of helplessness about personal destiny. In workplace, this is likely to have an impact on how willing employees are to voice opinions and give feedback. In cultures that are perceived as placing a greater importance on personal happiness on freedom, employees may be more likely to leave an organization when they are not happy in their role. Another interesting phase to this dimension is around attitudes to customer service. In indulgent cultures such as in the USA, the expectation is that customer service representatives visibly demonstrate their happiness with a smile and friendly demeanor. And the last is example of restraint. Russia is example of restrained cultures. Contrast with indulgent cultures, this would be considered inappropriate and unnatural. Also, there is a greater sense of helplessness about personal destiny. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Irma Rahmawati, and in this opportunity I would like to continue the explanation about analysis of the difficulties of Korean pre-service teachers teaching in the United States in terms of post-TVET culture dimension. In South Korea, the conversation regarding international teaching practicum has become particularly active as a consequence of the increased number of immigrant and racial or ethnic minorities present in the country. The majority of the research focuses on international teaching practicum that are both developed and implemented in Western countries. More studies are needed to understand the contextualized and lived experiences of international teaching practicum of pre-service teachers coming from non-Western contexts. Korean social studies pre-service teachers experience difficulties speaking in a foreign language and in adapting to a different culture. By focusing those difficulties, we want to analyze in terms of host-fed culture dimension. After we read this article and analyze it, we found some difficulties with pre-service Korean teachers. Among them, first, what we found in this article is that they feel uncomfortable, including new things, unknowns, surprises, or things that are different than usual. This is supported by information from the article that most of the participants indicated that they had not been exposed to other countries before, or even the students who had traveled to other countries before. They also commented that the international teaching practicum, unlike shorter trips, was challenging since they had to actually live in a new society and have close interaction with local students and teachers in American school. With this fear, it caused culture shock to them because of cultural differences. The second is that the pre-service Korean teacher experiences difficulties in adapting to an English-speaking environment outside of Korea. This is supported by the statement of one participant of the program saying that, although I had a double major in English education in Korea, I had few change there to speak in English. This is also supported by their lack of experience in traveling to other countries, and they have never been acquainted with the culture of the United States countries, so that it causes their uncomfortable in communicating directly in perfect English. So, based on the difficulties relating to the host-fed culture dimension is uncertain avoidance. Uncertain avoidance indicates to what extent a culture programs its member to feel either uncomfortable or comfortable in unstructured situations. Unstructured situations are novel, unknown, surprising, and different from usual. This is closely related to how pre-service Korean teachers feel uncomfortable or afraid in passing a new culture. However, with these difficulties, the pre-service Korean teachers are able to control their problems, and then they try to adapt so that they get positive from the difficulties themselves. In concluding, taken all together, although participants encountered challenges such as language barrier and adjustment to a new environment, they did gain positive attitudes towards using a foreign language and sense of self-efficacy and personal accomplishment by navigating this new challenge. I think that's all about my material.